Now you might think that your future is bright and that the best days are yet to come. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends, enemies, and exes, I am here to tell you that all those statements are straight lies. Say what you want, but the truth is, we are going downhill from here. The brighter days have either happened or are happening right now as we speak, because we all know there is no better time than now. I'm not being totally negative though. I mean, if you've lived any life or touched some grass, you will realize that we've scaled the mountains of technological advancements and we've reached the top. Or have we? You see, back in the day, I literally remember seeing my first touchscreen phone. And due to the part of the world that I was blessed to be born in, everyone thought it was witchcraft. But now, artificial intelligence can now think faster than a million me's combined. Wars can be fought without a single missile touching the ground. But we have to agree that somehow the more technologically advanced we become as a society, the more of an emotional shift there is. And that is why nostalgia is such a big thing to everyone and anyone. You often hear the coffin dodgers talk about back in the day, and they are right and wrong. Right in the fact that we've become socially fragmented, yet wrong in the fact that life has become so much easier. Now hear me out. If you're doing okay anywhere in the world right now, the truth is you're probably living a more comfortable life even compared to some very well-off individuals back in the day. And that's facts. But it's also Cowboy Bebop. Despite being set in a futuristic, technologically advanced future, the world of Bebop is messy. Crime syndicates are rampant. Inequality still exists. Corrupt institutions, check. There is loneliness despite hyper-connectivity. It presents a future where humanity has advanced technologically but not emotionally. And if you were to ask me, I dead ass see the future of Cowboy Bebop as the future will probably have. Now let me give you a scenario. A couple of years ago, if I told you about a technology that has the ability to make videos and scenes out of thin air that my grandma will probably believe, you think, wow, that is amazing. And guys, I'm talking about Sora. I'm not saying it was not a great technology, or in this case, it is still not a great technology. It definitely is. But look at what we did with it and how after the hype died, so did the user base. I'm not saying that the future is overrated, or am I? But anyway, what I'm saying is that Cowboy Bebop makes us realize that whether you're a human in 1926, whether you're a human in 2026, or whether you're a human in 2126, for those watching this in 2126 was goody, bro. The fact remains that you're still a human and that you are going to carry that weight. Agree or disagree? Drop it in the comments. Let's get straight into it. As said before, Cowboy Bebop is set in the future. But in this future, we've abandoned our lives on Earth, with majority of humanity leaving Earth after a premature rollout of gate technology caused an explosion of a gate device. This is basically equipment that allows for hyperspace travel, which in turn is simply a way to travel quicker across space. Now, this explosion shattered a large portion of the moon, creating permanent and chaotic rings of meteors and debris which rained down on Earth and wiped out much of the population. And this caused survivors to abandon Earth in search of more habitable systems, although most of those who remained live in underground slums due to the constant meteor shower. Mind you, all this that I've just talked about is happening in 2022. Flying cars, they said. But the true story starts in 2071, and by then space travel and tech is highly advanced but not glamorous at all. The world has advanced AI, cybernetic limbs, advanced medicine. Elon's spaceships do not even hold a candle, my guy. But old CRT screens still exist. Some analog tech still survives, going to prove that people will use whatever works, whatever is affordable, and most importantly, whatever survives the test of time. And this gives Cowboy Bebop a retro-futuristic kind of vibe. In the Cowboy Bebop universe, there are no countries. Instead, these are replaced by planetary allegiances. But not all planets are equal. Due to this overstretch, there is a huge governmental failure due to massive power gaps, leading to criminal syndicates and corporate power dominance that control the populations. The economy is defined by deep wealth gaps and a bleak sense of financial survival, no different than today. But the main story follows the lives of the crew of a ship called the Bebop, who we'll look at today. The crew of the ship include 4 individuals and Ayn. Ayn is a Welsh corgi, although this is the last time you'll hear about Ayn, because I personally despise of corgis. You have a complaint, take it up with management. The crew is brought together by something that is institutionalized in this future, which is bounty hunting. Bounty hunters, also known as cowboys, are basically licensed freelance law enforcement. They exist because, as I said earlier, the government resources are stretched thin. I guess governing a whole planet is not the easiest thing. The police cannot effectively control the entire solar system. So, they outsource dangerous captures, broadcast criminals publicly, and pay rewards once they are captured. Now I know what some of you are thinking. Wow, bounty hunters must be so cool. True, but one of the themes of the series is that bounty hunters are portrayed as free, thus their nicknames cowboys. But that freedom comes at a cost: instability, poverty, emotional drifting, and a general lack of roots. The crew can go anywhere, but they struggle to build lasting relationships or futures. The show questions whether absolute freedom actually leads to happiness. When there's absolute freedom, there's a paradox of choice, because a complete lack of boundaries forces an overwhelming volume of daily decisions. There's also a burden of responsibility, because when absolute freedom removes external rules, individuals bear sole blame for every personal failure. And lastly, there's a loss of meaning, because as I said earlier, a human being is a human being, and human beings find fulfillment by working through challenges and fulfilling duties and roles. Absolute freedom eliminates the friction required to build grit, a sense of purpose, and true satisfaction. But that's just what I think. My question to you is, do you think absolute freedom is realistic? Drop it down in the comments. I feel the need to defend myself though. I don't mean that freedom doesn't increase happiness. I totally agree that the opportunity to make choices significantly enhances long-term well-being, but optimal human well-being requires a careful balance between personal autonomy and structural constraints. As you can see, it's a balance. So before you leave that relationship because you don't want to compromise, before you leave that job because you want to freelance or hustle, before you book that trip because you refuse to be a slave to money. Not that any of these things are bad, but before you make any decision, think about the result. So is being a bounty hunter cool as hell? Of course. Is it a lifestyle for everyone? Of course not. Even though the Bebop crew travels together, they are emotionally distant for most of the series. The ship feels like a temporary home for broken people who do not know where they fit into the universe. Each person hides pain, avoids vulnerability, drifts from place to place, and struggles to belong. As I said, we'll be looking at the crew of the ship: Ed, the smiling exile; Faye, the frozen asset; Jet, the broken anchor; and Spike, the prisoner of the past. So let's start with Ed, because the Bebop universe is held together by technology, but very few characters truly understand it, and Ed does. She just doesn't live in the system. She literally flows through it. Like many of us, Ed's story started with her parents, specifically her father, who was a map maker. Years before the series starts, her father took her to a daycare center on Earth and he walked away to map Meteor impact craters, and basically completely forgot that he left her there. This man never returned. He was off to secure the lactose and negotiate with the cows. Ed then spent her early days at an orphanage, although she found the environment boring and walked away on her own to live in the ruins of the planet, where she learned computer hacking and became a legendary figure under the name Radical Ed. She possesses a genius-level intellect. She serves as the ship's primary information gatherer, easily bypassing high-level corporate and military firewalls. Apart from that, on the Bebop, Ed represents pure uncorrupted innocence on a ship filled with cynical, traumatized adults. While the rest are trapped by their pasts, Ed lives entirely in the present moment. In the end, she chooses to leave the crew when she crosses paths with her father, who is happy to see her again but immediately forgets her when a new meteor strikes in the horizon. She simply accepts the fact that yes, her father loves her, but his obsession means that he will never be a traditional parent, and that the Bebop is a place where broken people wait around to face their pasts, deciding to move forward into her own future. And it seems that she was holding the crew together because her departure is the catalyst for the end, because it proves to the rest of the crew that the temporary family they built is fracturing. Once the innocence leaves, the reality settles in, leading to the tragic final episodes. Ed is the shining star of the crew, the counterweight to the rest. As mentioned before, she lives in the present. She doesn't worry about the future or grieve about the past. She is unbothered by isolation. Even when abandoned by her father, she thrives in that isolation, turning the abandonment into freedom. She becomes a safe space. Even her hacking skills are not for money or power, purely for the love of the game, curiosity, playfulness, and a desire to solve puzzles. She becomes a catalyst for warmth, causing the cynical adults to drop their guard and experience brief moments of happiness. The most tragic theme of Cowboy Bebop is the inability to let go of the past, but Ed is ahead of the series. You see what I did there? Ed is ahead. Ed is ahead of the series in that she's the only character who successfully breaks this cycle. Now for my cougar hunters out there, the vintage enthusiasts. Faye Valentine is the oldest in the crew, but she's a baddie for real, I cannot blame you. The series starts in 2071, but Faye is born in 1994. Some of you all weren't even born, myself included. She was completely ordinary. She took forever to get ready, flipped the pillow to the cold side. She put music on just to skip every single damn song. She needed to save money while still adding things to the cart. She was just a girl. Although in 2014, at the age of 20, she was involved in a spacecraft accident, and because her injuries were untreatable with 21st century medicine, her family placed her in cryogenic sleep. Faye slept through the 2022 gate explosion that destroyed Earth's surface and woke up 54 years later in 2068. The world she knew entirely gone. She suffered from total amnesia, remembering absolutely nothing about her identity, her family, or her past. Now, upon waking up, the medical corporation handed her a bill for her cryogenic freezing, inheriting massive debt. And on top of that, she was betrayed by the same people she woke up to, teaching her to trust no one. After this, Faye spent years operating as a high-stakes gambler, a con artist, and occasional bounty hunter before joining the Bebop. But at the start, it's a question whether she was really part of the crew or she simply treated the ship as a safe house to hide from debt collectors and run away from her problems. Her trajectory shifts when a mysterious package arrives on the Bebop, containing a tape that carried the video of a teenage Faye cheering on for her future self to keep going. This triggered her childhood memories and prompted her to search for her origin, therefore unlocking her amnesia. She returns to Earth, and upon meeting one of her former classmates, now old and frail, she realizes that her past was completely dead and there was no home for her in the history books. In the end, Faye returns to the Bebop, realizing that the dysfunctional crew is the family she now has, but she arrives as the family is permanently fracturing. She weeps as a member of the crew. The main character of the series walks away from the Bebop on a suicide mission, never to return again. For Faye, she keeps people at a distance by manipulating and scamming them, reclaiming a sense of purpose that she completely lost when she woke up bankrupt and amnesiac. She runs away whenever she feels emotionally safe. She deeply craves a home and a family. But whenever the Bebop crew shows genuine care, she panics, steals their money, and flees to protect herself from the vulnerability of rejection. She operates on a very toxic rule: leave them before they leave you. Faye is haunted by a past she cannot remember. She is a 20th century teenager trapped inside the cynical body of a 21st century space fugitive. Without the memories, she has no anchor to define who she is, but when she recovers her memories, she doesn't find the answers, neither does she find peace. She then spends the entire series running away from the Bebop, only to realize in the final episode that the ship was the only genuine home she ever had in this new world. It's sad that she figures out how to drop her guard and accept a new family precisely at the moment that that family permanently collapses. Jet Black is the father of the crew, the logic in the madness, the original member of the Bebop who built the ship as a sanctuary for drifting souls because his own ideals were completely shattered by a corrupt world. Before becoming a bounty hunter, Jet was an elite investigator for the ISSP, the Inter-Solar System Police, even earning the name the Black Dog because once he sank his teeth into a case, this guy basically never let go. Jet operated under a strict traditional code of honor and justice. However, he quickly realized that the ISSP was deeply corrupt, frequently taking bribes and collaborating with the criminal underworld syndicates. His life then became completely unraveled due to two deeply personal betrayals that occurred nearly back to back. Firstly, his partner Alyssa abruptly packed her bags and left him without warning. She left a single note stating that she could no longer stand his overprotective, controlling nature, basically breaking up with him. Devastated by this, Jet buried himself in his work, and while chasing a criminal with his corrupt partner, Jet was blindsided and intentionally set up, allowing a syndicate assassin to ambush him. The ambush cost Jet his left arm, and rather than getting a high-tech, lifelike biological graft, Jack intentionally chose a clunky, mechanical, cybernetic replacement. He kept the metal arm as a permanent, physical reminder of the cost of blind trust and systemic corruption. Disgusted by the police force and grieving his old life, Jet then resigned from the ISSP and purchased the Bebop. He took to the stars as a freelance bounty hunter, eventually crossing paths with the crew. Together they established a business partnership based on a shared rule: never pry into each other's pasts. Now, despite his tough exterior, Jet is the emotional glue of the Bebop. He is the one who cooks the meals, tends to his carefully cultivated bonsai trees, repairs the ship and manages the finances. And while he constantly grumbles about the crew moving onto his ship and eating his food, he deeply values the community. He provides a safe, non-judgmental space for them, precisely because he knows how cruel the outside world is. Although in the series finale, Jet is forced to watch his surrogate family disintegrate. After Ed leaves and Faye is in confusion as to where she belongs, another member of the crew prepares to go on a dangerous mission. And Jet tries to reason with him. Realizing he cannot stop him from facing his destiny, Jet cooks him one final meal. And in the end, Jet is left entirely alone on the Bebop, remaining as the sole survivor of the temporary home he fought so hard to maintain, as he watches the main character walk away from the Bebop on a suicide mission, never to return again. Now, Jet bears the physicality of trauma with his cybernetic arm. In a universe with seamless biological tissue replacement, Jet intentionally chooses a clunky old metal arm. The arm is a permanent, self-inflicted reminder of his past betrayal by his police partner. He refuses to heal the wound completely because he wants the weight of the metal to remind him of the price of blind trust. Jet's relationship with his ex-lover Alyssa also explores the toxic side of traditional protective masculinity. Jet believes he was being a perfect protector, but Alyssa felt suffocated by his rigid rules and inability to let her make her own choices. And the sad truth is that Jet did not start out as a cynical bounty hunter. He was a deeply honorable man broken by systemic corruption. Becoming a cowboy was Jet's way of keeping his personal moral code intact. He still hunts criminals, but he does it entirely outside of a broken, bureaucratic system that he no longer respects. His tragedy is that he builds a sanctuary for broken people, knowing deep down that broken people eventually move on or destroy themselves. Spike, our main character in the series, is not a traditional hero chasing a dream. He is a literal ghost, a man who survived his own death and spent the rest of his life waiting for what happens next. Long before the Bebop, Spike was a rising star in the Red Dragon Syndicate. He operated as a lethal enforcer alongside Vicious, who was an equally dangerous, cold-blooded operative. Although for Spike, his time in the Syndicate did not leave him without a wound. During a brutal Syndicate gunfight, Spike was severely injured and lost his right eye, which was surgically replaced by a high-tech cybernetic prosthetic. But Spike's life starts going downhill when he falls deeply in love with Julia, a beautiful, enigmatic woman who at the time was currently Vicious's girlfriend. Vicious's vicious girlfriend? You get it. Now, after his injury, Julia nursed Spike back to health, but this led to a passionate, secret affair, and they realized they could never be happy within the confines of the mafia. To escape this life, Spike decided to fake his own death to escape the Syndicate permanently, and he asked Julia to meet him at a specific graveyard so they could run away together. Although Vicious discovered the affair, he cornered Julia and gave her a horrific choice: either to murder Spike at that graveyard, or Vicious would torture and kill both of them. To protect Spike's life, Julia refused to show up at the graveyard and went into deep hiding. Spike mistakenly believed that she had simply abandoned him, and after surviving his staged execution, he left his heart behind, viewing his post-Syndicate life as a meaningless dream. Spike went on to wander the solar system as a drifter until he crossed paths with Jet Black. They pulled their resources together and bought the Bebop, becoming freelance bounty hunters. And when we say Spike left his heart behind, as a bounty hunter you can see his absolute recklessness in everything he does. He simply does not hold his life in high regard. In the final arc, Julia emerges from hiding and they cross paths with Spike, where they plan to escape together. But while fleeing, Julia is shot by one of the assassins Vicious has sent and passes away. And And with her death, the last string holding Spike to the living world snaps. After this, Spike returns to the Bebop one last time. He shares a meal with Jet, rejects Faye's plea not to throw his life away, and launches a solo assault on the Red Dragon Syndicate, where Spike and Vicious face off. Vicious slashes Spike, and Spike fires a bullet directly through Vicious, killing him instantly. Severely bleeding and stumbling down the grand stairs into the morning sun, Spike encounters a crowd of shocked Syndicate members as he points a finger gun at them and whispers, "Bang." He collapses on the floor, and somewhere in the cosmos, a star falls, indicating a warrior has fallen. Now, Spike's prosthetic right eye is the central metaphor for his entire character. As Spike explains himself, his real eye looks at the past, while his fake eye looks at the present. This means that he views his current reality, the Bebop, his friendships, and the bounty hunting as a superficial, meaningless dream. To Spike, the only real world was the one he left behind with Julia in the Syndicate. His arc argues that faking your own death or physically running away does not grant you freedom. Your past is an anchor. If you do not actively resolve it, it will eventually drag you down. Spike serves as a tragic warning about the cost of emotional stubbornness. He chooses to remain a distant, emotionally isolated tenant of the ship, valuing the ghost of a past romance over the living, breathing community trying to save him in the present. And when Julia dies, Spike's dream ends. Going to fight Vicious isn't a quest for revenge, it's just his way of finally forcing his body to catch up to his soul. By confronting Vicious and dying on his own terms, Spike finally wakes up from his long, agonizing dream, achieving the peace that eluded him throughout the entire series. Do you guys think he won the battle and lost the war, or lost the war and won the battle? You let me know. And that's it. Cowboy Bebop covers deep themes in a monotonous and comedic way. It covers loneliness and isolation, meaning and purpose, identity and reinvention, escapism, human connection, found family and belonging, boredom, and way more. But as usual, I'm not going to spoon feed you. Explore the series for yourself. But for this one, explore carefully. Because what appears shallow is much deeper at times. Cowboy Bebop is a story about the devastating cost of nostalgia. It proves that running away, even to the edge of the universe, will never grant you freedom if you are still carrying the weight of yesterday in your heart.